Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy. My name is Ibrahim Sani. In my office right now is a dear old friend of mine, Dr. O. Ihsan, the Principal Advisor and Pacific Research Center of Malaysia of KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific. Ihsan, we look at today's situation. There's a few things that is coming up. DAP election is coming up. PKR election is coming up. Overtures of how the situation is when it comes to their relationship with UMNO and their other coalitions, including Sabah Sarawak Partners, is always under scrutiny. And then, of course, some interesting numbers have been announced. The Malaysian economy is rather stable right now. We've seen how QAP, EPF are posting good returns in the investment, even though one or two investments might seem a bit shady. E-fisheries, for instance, by QAP in Indonesia. But generally speaking, portfolio-wise, these investments are taking place. Danantara, a very strange SWF, Sovereign Wealth Fund from Indonesia, has been announced with 900 billion US. It seems like the mood in ASEAN is stabilizing. Do you see something different from this situation, or do you feel that it's actually quite, it is what it is?
Well, I think nowadays a lot of ASEAN countries, at least the leaders of these countries, they are trying to, number one, sort of balance between the two sides in the US-China confrontations, sort of pleasing Donald Trump on the one hand, and also trying to hold on to China. And then also domestically, of course, they also have their political concerns, right? Because if they don't get their domestic situation right, then they might be out of power very soon. So, well, they also have to balance this sort of the desire to have more foreign investments and thereby, in a sense, pleasing all these foreign big powers. And then on the other hand, to act a little bit nationalistic to show their supporters that they are really well powerful, influential, and so on. And that, I think, both Anwar Ibrahim as well as Prabowo are doing to various extents. Take Anwar for example. On the one hand, in order for us to sort of move away from this so-called middle income trap and get on to more high-tech industry and so on, you do need a lot of investments from the United States. But on the other hand, well, you need some, shall we say, quick fixes as well. You need massive investments, and at the moment only China can provide that, because the United States under Donald Trump is not in a hurry to invest elsewhere. If anything, I saw road shows of by, I think, let's say the commercial units of the US Embassy trying to get Malaysians to invest in the United States, right?
It's very strange,
so on the one hand, Anwar would have to balance between the US and China very, very carefully. On the other hand, domestically, he also has to posture a little bit. He has to be very gung-ho on the Middle Eastern issues, especially that between the Palestinians and the Israelis. He has to get very excited about defending Palestinian rights, advancing their rights, and so on, because there is a domestic audience which is very receptive to that. But that, of course, as our immediately former ambassador to US has just informed us, the American side is not very pleased on that, and thereby, well, I mean, you don't get a phone call from and with Donald Trump, at least in the short run. So all this, as a leader of a country, as a political leader of a country, you have to really balance very well your personal desire to stay in power, and that comes, well, in a democratic country, from popular mandate, from support of the common folks. And on the other hand, you also want to do something for the country, right, to advance the country's economic interests. So same goes with Anwar, and same goes with, let's say, Prabowo.
Yeah, but Nazri was asked to return from being the ambassador of the US. We've heard Ong Kian Ming suggesting names. I don't know why that was traveling so well, but he mentioned Nurul Izzah, Tengku Zafrul, even Nazir Raza as the potential candidates. Do you think that our previous ambassador to the US was reprehended in a way because in a way PMX didn't have an audience with Donald Trump upon inauguration?
Well, of course, he was not the first choice of Malaysia to be the ambassador, right? I mean, at least not the Madani government's first choice. But, well, he's well versed. If I remember correctly, his father was a diplomat. He was born overseas and so on. So this is a very polished personality as our former tourism minister and so on. But the overall shall we say, macro environment is not in his favor, right? There was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and we take a very strong stand on one side. And then, of course, well, Donald Trump coming into power. And you saw Nasri trying his best, even holding up some sort of MAGA, sort of paraphernalia, right? But ultimately, that did not quite work. I wouldn't blame him. I think it's just the macro environment. And you mentioned several potential choices mooted by Ong Kian Ming. I think those are very nice personalities, and they have the stature and so on. Daughter of the Prime Minister, successful banker, and well, successful former banker.
Both of bankers.
But I think the government, it's more in the mood for, shall we say, a professional diplomat, somebody who has been ambassador somewhere else, and so on. If it were up to me, if I were the Prime Minister, I would appoint another, shall we say, more colorful personality, because dealing with Donald Trump, you cannot have a bureaucrat doing that. You need to sometimes sometimes even argue with him, sometimes toying with him. You need to have a personality who can, shall we say, stand up to Donald Trump, not in a negative sense.
The name that comes to mind is Tony Fernandez for some reason.
Yeah, somebody like that. Standing up doesn't mean in a negative manner, but somebody whom Trump would say, this is somebody I like.
What about China right now and the orbit that it wants to create, considering that the ASEAN Chairmanship is a big deal? We are going to relish our opportunities here this year. Do you feel that China and ASEAN/Malaysia, do you feel that is the time or the moment to act right now?
Well, actually, I think the real question is what more? Because you see, China and ASEAN are largest trading partners of one another. It used to be China's largest trading partner was the United States, right? But nowadays, no longer. It turns out it's ASEAN. So, well, we have very deep and broad economic interactions with China. So the question is really, what else could you do? I mean, without encroaching on each other's sovereignty, right? It's not as if we are like strangers. Hey, shall we do some business together, trade with one another, invest in one another? No, we are much beyond that, right? You see all these wonderful buildings around us. They have Chinese contractors building them up. And we go to China, what is your first choice of hotel? Is Shangri-La, right? Well, that's debatable whether it's a Malaysian or Singaporean conglomerate, but still, you know, it's so it's very deep interaction between the two sides. And of course, well, the more the merrier, right? I mean, we can use more foreign investments, and at the moment, China seems to be the major source of this sort of economic investments, trading, and so on.
What about the DAP election and the PKR election? This will set the tone in terms of who is going to stand for elections in the GE13. Do you feel that, or 16, I lost count on the GEs already, but the GE that is impending us 2026, 27. How important are these party elections?
Well, because in Malaysia, shall we say, the organizational structure of various parties, whether in the government or the opposition, is actually, I think in political science, you call them Leninist party structure. Namely, it's very centralized power. Granted, you have the representatives of the branches and so on electing the central committee members, and then they have the party presidents and so on. Well, you don't see in the US, for example, Donald Trump is not the chairman or president of the Republican Party, right?
Yeah.
They have a much more loose structure, but ours is very serious. Very,
in fact, I don't even know who the Republican chairmanship
indeed,
is.
because he's just like, I think in Malaysia you will call him an executive secretary, somebody who takes care of the office in the party headquarters, right?
Exactly.
So, but here it's very serious, it's very centralized, right? And therefore, I think the younger generation in the party, not exactly the youth wings, but shall we say younger, middle level leaders, of course they would like to advance their political careers. You see that in DAP, you see that in PKR, and I think in the opposition side, PAS also is up for a party election at some point. So of course, the middle tier leaders, they are eager to have their shot at the top post of the party, right? And the existing leaders in DAP, the Lims and so on, they are of course still. I love last time talking about Lims. Last time there was a minister, Gerakan president, I think Dr. Lim Keng Yek. When people asking questions like, when are you stepping down? So, oh, I can still serve. So,
but same
this kind of mentality.
No, but still, the overtures inside the past leaders are also saying things like Ustad Hadi still has the capacity to lead. The Muktamar is happening September this year. And then, you know, you see some interesting leaders like the Menteri Besar of Terengganu, Dr. Sam. He doesn't want to contest. He's saying that, you know, better let other people contest and all that. So when we look at some potential leaders in past also, they're taking a step back and they're letting the status quo run the show. And it's very discouraging because we want to see younger leaders from past to rise as well, and all the others. And when we look at some of the ministers that is coming from KR and DAP, for instance, Fahmi Fadzil was mentioning something interesting last week. The key leaders of PKR, the ministers, are all below 50. Fadil Naside is 47, Rafizi Ramli is 47, Lee Kang and Fahmi Fadzil both 44, Nik Nazmi 43. These are young people. But it seems like they've dominated the whole scene for quite some time, 20 odd years already. DAP is the same thing. And of course, Stephen Sim now is rising up, or plans to rise up, and many more. Do you think that because the 40-somethings or leaders inside all these parties are now still there, it kind of inhibits the young from entering rather more serious positions?
Well, because they enter politics almost upon graduation, right? 20 years ago. Nik Nazmi, for example, I still remember a young and dashing Nik Nazmi coming back from UK. And I was in your position, I was interviewing him on behalf of a Chinese paper, right? And this is an up-and-coming guy, Anwar's political secretary and so on. And now, well, finally he became a minister. Well, I think if they're 40-something, they still deserve a shot at the party's top leadership. After all, they sacrificed like 20 years of their youth, right? You know, in the political wilderness. But let's say Anwar himself and his close associates, the Home Affairs Minister Saifuddin Nasution and so on, well, I wouldn't say they should immediately step down, but I mean, they should think of like a time frame for them to retire and so on, and make ways for the likes of Rafizi, Nik Nazmi, and Chang Lik Kang, and so on. In DAP, it's, well, technically, DAP has made that transition, right? Anthony Locke is supposedly now in charge, right? But of course, the Lims are still very, shall we say, influential. I think it's an effort to get rid of this influence and to sort of make sure that Anthony is really in charge. You know, I think there's that sort of sentiment within the party. The respect, well regards for Kit Siang, nevertheless, of course.
Now let's shift our focus towards the economic elements of this right now. Policy is going to be driving the politics moving forward. I believe that the political risk premium has dissipated to some degree. I don't think there would be any Sheraton moves until the next election. Having said that, my postulation is that for the next election, it's going to be status quo. I really believe that's the case. In a way where nobody's going to cross over the one-to-one outright. So there's still going to be some machinations, there's still going to be some dealings, and Sabah Sarawak is going to play a very critical role. Not many people know that you're from Sabah, but you know that's the key factor here. Sarawak is very strong, if not, it's getting stronger. In terms of bold requests that they're making to the federal government. Do you think that that's going to be the case for the general elections?
Well, I think you're gonna. Well, since you mentioned I'm from Sabah, I think you are gonna have a snippet, a preview of that in the upcoming Sabah state election, which is supposed to be held within the next few months, right? Namely, if my prediction is correct, all the existing parties, they are gonna win. Well, almost an exact number of seats that they are currently winning. It's just that the permutation will be different, right? I mean, how they form coalitions. Now it can be parties A, B, and C. But you know, in future it could be parties A, C, and D, right? So, and the same thing I think will go for the federal level, as you mentioned just now. These parties may win approximately the same number of seats, with past, I think, making even more inroads.
I believe so, especially in these Malay urban areas.
True, but still not enough to win an outright majority, right? So, well, then it depends on whom, I mean, or which party they could convince to enter into a coalition.
I believe Bersatu might not make inroads. I think that they will see a drop.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, being from Sabah and Sarawak, I'm not so sure I don't know whether it's proud or not so proud to say these Sarawak and Sabah parties, despite their sort of very vocal yearnings for well, not independence, but how do you call that? There's a term for it.
Autonomy.
Autonomy and so on, right?
Self-determination.
And at the end of the day, I think they will be the first to switch sides and to make changes. Shall they see one side which is more dominant,
more dynamic and fluid in terms of who they want to partner with, I'll put it that way. And then of course policy is very critical right now. Do you think that shifts in policy might be less dramatic now, considering that you know we're looking at the same number, considering that you know no outright majority, considering that Sabah Sarawak are friends, whether or not during fair weather friends or something to that effect. Do you think that because of this situation not changing from today in 2025 all the way until 2027, 28, policies are going to remain the same?
Well, more or less, you cannot have that kind of drastic cuts in subsidies and things like that anymore, because you have about 2 years left in your government, right? And if you do that, people might be displeased and therefore not vote for you. So in terms of that kind of, I mean, something which hurts people's wallets and purses, I think you wouldn't see it anymore. But let's say PH traditional support base, conventional support base, they're still yearning for some sort of reforms, right? That's why you see in these parliamentary terms, all this creating a parliamentary service or restoring one, and then to have various, what I would call somewhat decorative reform measures, not those which will really cut into the vested interests.
And then, do you think that the changes in terms of or the risk of, say, for instance, the court cases, Najib Razak, whom not many people know, you were once an aide to him, I don't know when, 2013 or something to that effect. Do you think that he plays a key feature as well in terms of how we look at the domestic politics?
Yeah. Well, I was a political secretary to Najib Razak when he first became prime minister until I think roughly 2.5 years later, well before the 1MDB debacle. I think.
But you know the man up close in personal, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, he it's very methodical in the way he thinks and so on. Shall we say a very economic mind. He thinks about economics and even econometrics, shall we say. He likes all these graphs and charts and so on. And I think even today he still remains a very potent political force in the country. That's why there are, well, I mean, there are those who hate him, there are those who like him. Some try to get him out, at least on some sort of house arrest and so on. But then, if he does come out, even though still under some sort of house detention, would he be pro, shall we say, the Anwar side? Or shall he be pro more the other side? I think that also remains a question. Or would he become a unifying figure that could bring together both Pakatan Harapan, Perikatan Nasional, Perikatan namely Bersatu and PAS, mainly PAS, and UMNO. To have some sort of, shall we say, the grand Malay unity type of government. For non-Malays, if this sort of grand Malay unity thing with Anwar and PKI in it, it's somewhat more palatable, frankly speaking, because it's not in the same vein as, let's say, the Muhyiddin type of grand Malay unity. So let's see what kind of role he could play if he does, shall we say, get out.
And then, of course, with KSI Strategic Institute, what are the areas of concern that you're looking at and trying to unearth and perhaps even publish?
Well, the KSI, I think it's very concerned about the socio-economic development of the country, namely how, as you mentioned, the various government policies, how it will affect people's livelihoods and so on, and also Malaysia's place amidst this sort of geopolitical changes. Personally, I look at indeed ASEAN's positioning of itself within the context of this US-China confrontations, and of course I look at the politics, the power struggles within individual ASEAN countries such as Malaysia.
But I believe Prabowo is going to play a critical factor here. Because of the size of the economic weight, because of the population that is driving the talent development there and the wealth of human capital. Do you think that they're going to seize the day under Prabowo? It's still the same story of Indonesia, huge potential, unrealized again
well,
and again.
Remember 10 years ago when Jokowi took over, right? We had the same kind of very high expectations.
Yeah.
I would not say he disappointed, no, but well, he kept Indonesia moving, and Indonesia is moving quite steadily. And I think the same will be with Prabowo. As you mentioned, Indonesia is a large country with a huge population. It's not easy just to keep Indonesia afloat, right? I mean, there's so many mouths to feed, huh? Yeah. I mean, if you are not careful, you could degenerate into, shall we say, like some of the less developed members of ASEAN, even not to mention Africa. So, I think Jokowi did a good job, and I think Prabowo, well, literally feeding, because he's having this school lunch
gratis,
program, right? Again, just as I said, all these leaders, they will first have to, in a sense, take care of their household. Well, not literally the familial household, but the country, right? To make sure that people live happily and comfortably. And I think at least for the, let's say, the first 2 years of his presidency, he will focus on that. On the more...
But the announcement of Danantara, people are likening it to 1MDB.
Yeah, well, because there was a precedence of 1MDB, right? And Indonesia is not exactly unfamous for its level of corruption. Therefore, of course, people so-called wax cynical, right, on this. Well, we will give it a shot, a chance, and let's see how it performs, at least during his first term. Well, he can have a second term, by the way. So let's see how it goes. I think people look at the successful example of, let's say, Singapore with Temasek and with GIC and with the Norwegian sovereign fund and so on, and therefore people are tempted to see, if we could also have similar setup, maybe it could benefit the country. But of course, it's very tempting sometimes to put your fingers into the so-called piggy bank or cookie jar, as they say. So hopefully the painful experience of 1MDB would not be replicated, among our neighbors.
Final question, Isan, in terms of risk profile and risk management of the geopolitical movement, economic situation as well. 2025, before we started the show, I keep on saying this. Oh, it's going to be, every year we say a challenging year, challenging year, challenging. Oh my God, it is passé. Of course, that is the status quo. But what are the risk factors that you are looking at when it comes to 2025 moving forward?
Well, I specifically look at this sort of confrontations between mainland China and Taiwan, because China is very intent upon so-called reunifying.
Just this
Taiwan.
morning I read 25 jets in the Taiwanese airspace.
They have the highest frequency over the past few years of mainland Chinese jets circling Taiwan, right? So, and if there's some sort of conflicts between the two sides, then almost inevitably we might be dragged into it, because let's say the US somehow get involved, and the US has military assets in this part of the world, not just in Singapore, some even in Malaysia. So how are we going to allow them to deploy the military assets from here, for example? So that's one sort of sore point or hot spot which I'm looking at. But very ironically, with Donald Trump becoming president, I actually think the prospect for, shall we say, peace and stability is actually better than before, because Donald Trump is not ideologically predisposed to take one side or the other. You see, over the last few days, he would one day take Putin's side and say, Russia did not invade Ukraine. Another day he would say, Ukrainians are really good fighters, right?
It depends on who speak to him that day, I suppose.
True, but what's the ultimate
outcome
of this?
He is ideologically motivated to make money.
That's right.
That's about it.
Right. And in order to make money, you need peace and stability, right? Donald Trump and his friends, they are not selling weapons. They are, they are casino operators, hoteliers, right? You need peace and stability to run your hotels and casinos. So, by extension, so I think you will have, I wouldn't say the return of so-called Pax Americana, but at least more peaceful prospects for this part of the world, because Donald would come here and say, hey, hello, why are you fighting with one another, right? Why can't we make some money out of it instead of you guys sort of killing each other? So I think that kind of, shall we say, a slightly more positivist American involvement, I think is good for this part of the world.
It's strange that you put it that way, but I don't know how many people are going to disagree there. Thank you very much, Ihsan. Of course, a very strange moment for you as well, because you were stuck with the LRT just now.
That's right.
So did you find out what was the reason?
No, I think this country has to do a better job in terms of infrastructure.
Well, that is the note that our Transport Minister can perhaps take a look at as well. That was Dr. O. Ihsan, the Principal Advisor at KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific. If you've missed out any part of this interview or you want to learn more about conversations like this, just head on to astro.com, search for The Economy with Ibrahim Sani. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Catch you in the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.